Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's virtual session for our Future of Video series. The streaming market has reached a critical crossroads, and today we are going to be talking about the disruption that's occurring and the alternative to cable that has presented itself over the past decade and has now matured into a highly crowded and competitive market. We are now talking about consolidation, shifting consumer expectations and demands, and the new business models that are being entered into this market. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm Elizabeth Parks. I'm the president and CMO of Parks Associates. And today's session, we're going to spend the first 30 minutes. I'm going to share a little bit of Parks Associates' view of the market, some of our data, and then we will go into our conversation with our speakers. And I've got amazing representation here from Comcast, Verizon Business, Sling, and TiVo, and they're going to show their perspective over what's going on with all this consolidation, what it means for the consumer, what it means for the industry, and what we are seeing as we end the year and into 2026. So thank you again for joining. These speakers are an incredible lineup, and again, they're going to join us in about half an hour. We are going to take Q&A, and so if you have questions, be thinking about them as I'm sharing some of this research, and I will be working to incorporate those into the conversation. I want to send a big shout out to our sponsors, our premier research sponsor, Philo, and also our early event sponsors, InterDigital and TiVo. So thank you so much for your support. We're going to be hosting our in-person event November 18th through the 20th in Marina del Rey, California. And so very interested for you all to join us there. We just released in partnership with InterDigital, one of our event sponsors, a new custom report that's focused on streaming and live sports and some of the complexities there and the technical issues that have to get resolved to ensure that great experience. So we'd love for you to have the opportunity to read this research that we published in partnership with them. So feel free to download that at your convenience. And we do have a call out for our state of streaming report that we'll be releasing at Future of Video. We will also be sharing that at OTTX at CES. OTTX is one of our partners, and also into Q1. So would love if anybody else is interested in participating to reach out to me or Ashton Cambrell on our team. We are also constantly looking for innovative thinking and a vision of where this market's headed. So if you're interested in being on stage, we would love for you to join us at Marina del Rey, and please be sure to submit to speak. There's a simple form on our website to use here. And as we move forward in shaping our agenda and our speakers, we have the amazing insight from our awesome group of advisory board members who are helping with participation at the event and also telling us what they think is most important from their perspective. So before we get started with our conversation, I want to set the stage with some of Parks Associates research and give you some of our big picture perspective and some details on what's happening in the market. And I want to start out with this picture here, which is bringing in two big business theories. And I don't know if you all have read Clayton Christensen's book, The Innovator's Dilemma, or the Harvard Business Review article, Unbundling the Corporation. These are from way back when, but are really, really good business theories to be looking at and understanding disruption happening in the market with cheaper, more accessible services like Netflix coming in, and then the fragmentation building as these companies break up and look at connecting with the customers directly, and then separating and recombining through partnerships and mergers and acquisitions. So all of this is set up around the value that's taking place through these different phases, and we are definitely into the consolidation phase. And we are seeing all sorts of things take place across the market with new types of bold consolidation, innovation, and really a global expansion with video distribution. So we're going to be talking about these trends today, and also the position of the smart television and the OS, and what this means for the broader trends in the market, how platforms are strategically acquiring content, technology, and distribution capabilities to meet these new demands from the consumer and the new opportunities to connect brands, the advertising directly with those customers. So we have so much to talk about. There's a big deal today that I want to make sure we're mentioning because it's so important, the ESPN stake in the NFL network and what this means with this 10% equity stake, and really a broader strategy to help power the direct-to-consumer streaming offer that ESPN has, and that ability to bundle more and provide more value for their customers. And so it'll be really interesting to see how this launch goes and that consumer response to it. And I know that our speakers today who are going to be joining me have a lot to talk about sports and live content as just a major piece of the puzzle here with the new era of streaming. So let me share a little bit of research data here showing where we are with streaming services versus traditional pay TV. So traditional pay TV uptake has dropped now to 42% of all households, and we see that rise and saturation with streaming services at 89%. Consumers are caught between rising subscription prices and content fragmentation across these different services. And we're seeing a lot of changes happen in the past 6 months and expect more to come as consolidation continues. When we look at the average number of subscriptions per household, you can see how this has grown from 2020 with an average of 3 services per household now to almost 6 services. And you can see there that 29% of households subscribing to services have 5 to 8, and that 26% with 9 or more services. So that stacking and of services continues to be what consumers are doing. But when we look at their spending, it's been clear that there is a decrease in spending. And so now that average monthly spending on these services going from $81 a month in 2022 down to $71. So it's interesting to ask consumers about where they're going to reduce spending. There's a lot going on with the economy, inflation, costs, everything costs more. And so when we ask consumers questions out of our survey work of 8,000 households per quarter that we're fielding, we have a battery of questions that we're asking. There are a number of additional options here, but I pulled out this select responses, and you can see here these anticipated changes with increasing or decreasing spending, and video services being right there in the middle, takeout and delivery decreasing, groceries going up. When we look more closely at those expected changes, it's interesting to see how about a little more than half say they're going to stay the same. Specific to video services, 21% say they're going to spend less, 15% say they're going to spend more. So we continue to watch the market and how consumers are responding with all of these other things that are going on outside that might be impacting their decisions to spend money. When we look at the business models for streaming, it's really interesting to understand subscriber churn and how churn has really been part of the business model. It's not just a challenge, it's there and it's been there, and it's been pretty consistent across the board year over year. We're at the point now where services should be expecting subscribers to come and go, and there are strategies that are being built around reacquisition, promotional offers, and different content cycles that will end up bringing viewers back into the fold. And so the focus now is less on eliminating that churn and more on managing it and focusing on maximizing lifetime value of subscribers. So this business model shift and the acknowledgement of churn being there is really important. In addition, there has been introduction of ad tiers, some for services that said they would never ever have an ad tier, but yet they do. So you love this chart on the left where it's showing some of the traditional services that have already had advertising and staying about the same there. But on the right side, some of the newcomers who have introduced ads and that rise of consumers who are taking the basic services with ads. So they're gaining traction, and these new tiered plans are a key growth driver for streaming services and trying to really balance affordability for viewers while also getting those revenue opportunities with advertising. And ultimately, like cable, advertising is a cornerstone for these business models within video distribution. And we are tracking now that 57% of the user bases across these 8 top streaming services are now ad-based. And when we look at the current viewers and the forecasted viewers for free ad-based services and then those ad-supported tiers, you can see here some of the numbers, and this is US data. 142.5 million viewers now watching FAST services, 200 million paying to watch ads on some kind of ad-supported tier, and then you can see our projections, Parks Associates forecast of this market. So it's going to be very interesting to watch this continuing to unfold. And one of the other core areas that we're tracking, in addition to the different types of services and tiered offerings that are coming, is also the hardware and the platforms that consumers are watching video on. So I think this is an amazing chart showing that households are watching on average 54 hours a week of video, with the majority coming from the television, and every category increasing if you look back 12 years in time. And so one of the great things about Parks Associates research is the consistency, the reliability, and the view, the historical view that we can take, and we can say 12 years ago, we know how much time people were spending watching TV versus how much time they spend today. I want to bring up a closer view of the smart television. We are now tracking 68% of all US households, or 81 million households. So in Parks data, 1% is equal to 1.2 million households. We're tracking about 125 million households in the United States. So that 68% equates to 81 million households who now have a smart TV. You can also see that increase with the streaming media player, and this is about a 7 or 8 year view, and that slow little bit of a decline there with gaming consoles. This is really important also when we get to questions we're asking consumers of, you have all these different platforms, which is your primary platform that you use, which is the one that you use the most. And so you can see here very interesting results that put Samsung and Roku right up against each other. Again, this is US market data, and just shows some of those other players as well who are in the mix. In addition to understanding that OS, I also want, and the smart television, I also want to bring up that how consumers are subscribing to services is also a big area that we're tracking. Who are they? Who is the source of that subscription coming from? And I think this is really interesting and a great point to bring in this perspective of connectivity and the broadband providers, showing that 22% of streaming service subscriptions are coming from some kind of traditional provider, an ISP, pay TV, or mobile. You can also see this percent of subscriptions on the right-hand side coming specifically from that traditional service provider category, meaning these groups still play an incredible role. And actually, as we think that it's going to be an even bigger role as ISPs are looking for where their next bundle is. We know over time that bundles equal more stickiness, higher NPS in any of the service markets that we're testing. And I think this is a really interesting data that's just pulling out value added services, whether they're free or paid, traditional bundle, any bundle, any of these things across the different types of connectivity access, you're going to see a bump in NPS. And these service providers are looking for something to grab onto since they are shedding the traditional pay TV. So it's going to be a continued interesting market to see these bundles, and we think we're going to see more partnerships and consolidation as we move forward in 2026. I also want to bring up interactive television as a tie back into smart televisions and streaming media players and the OS. We spend a lot of time asking consumers about things they might be willing to do, how much they're willing to spend. And so we asked about the likelihood of using some interactive TV features in the future, things such as ordering food, getting more information, buying something directly, and you can see here this likelihood and very likelihood ratings. So there's major big commerce opportunities equaling a lot of revenue that is beyond video. And we also see this great opportunity showing up as far as the converging ecosystems of the home, and where there are opportunities to provide the experience at the end for the consumer with new value and appeal. And so when we ask about top interactive TV features that they see appealing, the highest rated one has to do with the smart home category, video doorbells, cameras, and security systems. So while we might be focused very much about the future of video at the event and in this session, there's a much bigger picture that has to do with broadband and the controls, comfort, smart home, and security side of the house. And we want to make sure you all are thinking about those opportunities, particularly when you think about players like Roku, Samsung, Amazon, major players that are going to have incredible impact. And so I want to just flash this slide again on the screen just to emphasize these different deals and these are just a handful of them. These really aren't even everything that's going on, but there is just so much going on where platforms are working to get new content. They've got new technologies being integrated, and again, that distribution to the consumer impacting the experience. So I want to also flash back to this custom report we did with InterDigital, because I'm going to share a little bit of the work we did with them on the sports viewer segments. And so again, we'd love for you to have the chance to read this research at your leisure, and there's some information on how you can get access to it. When we think about sports viewers, we're tracking that 43% of households say that they are a sports viewer, and then they tell us how they are viewing sports. And so it's really interesting to look at these different segments and understand what might motivate them or not. Also, just understanding what the total adoption of direct-to-consumer subscription services are for sports. We're tracking that at 33% of all households. And you can see here, we've got 6-month data going back to 2021, pretty consistent here, a third of all households who are subscribing to one of these types of services. And when we ask them, what's the issue? What are the pain points that you have with watching sports? 57% of them tell us that they have at least one of the challenges that we've listed here. And you can see what the biggest ones are: the inability to watch something they want because they haven't subscribed to it, difficulty finding the sports event, the poor quality video, or the live streaming lagging being an issue. And so again, these are areas that our panelists here in a few minutes are going to really be talking about, and we'll touch on some of this consolidation and the implications for live TV and sports. But before we go there, I want to just end on a few bigger picture things. I mentioned some of the tech giants at play, and I think this is a really interesting broader view of the market. You can see on the far right the streaming entertainment column there and the things that these major players are introducing, but look at all the other services, right? The tech giants are thinking way beyond streaming. They're thinking about monitoring. They're thinking about package delivery, fitness services, telehealth, the car and what that means. All of this is new services, and this is where we think the future is. It's going to be about brands connecting through services, and we tested 12 different key services, segmented them by their primary value propositions: entertainment, convenience, resources, and productivity and then discount and value. We looked a lot at memberships and understanding the value and loyalty that consumers will have towards certain services, and then also the mix of services that are to come. So there's a lot here to talk about, and I wanted to really make sure that everybody who's focused in on the streaming service market is absolutely laser focused there, but also has a much broader view of where things are headed, everything from the services you see on the screen now to other areas of the home environment, like the controls and comfort, safety, and security side. So I am very happy to move into our discussion portion of today's session. And again, I want to remind you all that there is the Q&A chat button. You're welcome to put questions in. I will be watching those. Our topics today are really focused on what I've just talked about, the strategic consolidation that we're seeing in the market, the rise of the smart TV and aggregated platforms, and also the experience in the competitive market that we're seeing. So I'm so excited to have these speakers join me. And so if you would go ahead and join me on camera, and we will be starting out again, just looking at this consolidation slide. We are going to have each speaker introduce themselves. So if you would, please share your name, what you do at the business, and what your company is doing as it relates to streaming, and then we will get into the Q&A. So JP, I'm so excited to have you join us from Comcast. Go ahead, if you would, and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Elizabeth. My name is JP Abello. I'm with Comcast. I'm in the product team. Our focus is the devices that consumers use to access these video services that will be discussed today. Our portfolio includes both set-tops and TVs. We have a number of set-top boxes and stream boxes deployed at Comcast, as well as Sky, and our syndication partners like Charter, Cox, Rogers, and Foxtel, and Mediacom. And we have TVs, smart TVs deployed at Sky. That includes a Sky Glass. And then we have consumer TVs under the consumer brand Consumer TVs. So we also work with the community through RDK management. And we have a partner there called Liberty Global that's deploying RDK with the community.
Okay, excellent. I know you're going to provide some great insights on the role of smart TVs and that OS. So thank you so much for joining us. Josh, welcome. It's always great to have you on any calls or on stage. So thank you so much for joining us today. Go ahead and explain your role at Verizon.
Yeah, thanks so much, Elizabeth and team. Really appreciate it. Maybe I talk too much. Maybe that's the problem. Listen, so I'm the CTO for Media and Entertainment at Verizon. We cover a nice part of the market, I think. Obviously, we're in a sector where communication is core, and a lot of what my team and I do is make sure that Verizon is properly positioned in the market to be able to have these conversations with you, with our customers, throughout the entire organization. A lot of what we do is act as a voice of the customer within the organization to make sure that your voice is being heard. Verizon plays in a number of places in this conversation, including our Fios cable platform, our connectivity. We are a major operator in telco in the US, and on top of all that, we really like what we're doing around our 5G deployment. I think a lot of what is coming in our industry is going to be around the 5G space.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. And yep, Verizon is a huge player and one that we're always tracking. Liz, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us today. Go ahead and explain your role at Sling.
Sure. And thank you, Elizabeth, for having me. My name is Liz Riemersma, and I head up strategy, business development, strategic partnerships for both Dish and Sling. And I additionally lead the P&Ls for our international business for Dish and Sling and for Sling Freestream. We operate from a streaming standpoint. Obviously, Sling is a vMVPD. We also have Sling Freestream, which is our FAST and AVOD service, which is attached to Sling. But then also on the Dish side, we have a hybrid product, right? We have we have streaming via connected boxes. So increasingly, our Dish Hopper platform is operating more and more like a platform with both traditional linear TV, but also streaming options, and then connected channels that range the gamut from international channels to fast channels, etc. We've had a long history, obviously, with both the satellite platform and streaming in the space. But certainly our future, and as we look towards what we do from a product standpoint, it is really focused on streaming.
Great, and we're so excited to have you. You have such a unique perspective in balancing all these distribution models, and so we really appreciate you making time today to join us. And Scott, welcome. So happy to have you join us as well.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, Elizabeth. So I look after global content strategy and business development at Xperi. So one way to think about it, we're a horizontal organization, but there are three core businesses that we support. There's our traditional pay TV business. There's TiVo OS. So we've developed an OS for TV manufacturers, TV OEMs. So we're seeing a lot of traction in market, and that's a new business line for us that's growing very well. And then automotive. So also an exciting area of opportunity from a video perspective. In terms of our content partner portfolio, that too sits across three pillars: the tier one global partners, the leading streamers in region, so BBC in the UK, Join in Germany, Mediaset in Italy, and many more. And then AVOD Fast. So one of the pieces of our business that I look after, I proposed the business plan around TiVo Plus. That's our AVOD Fast solution. And that also has seen a lot of growth over the past few years. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Great, and we love having you representing Xperi and TiVo, one of the early players in all of this distribution, and so a great perspective. So thanks for being here, Scott. Okay, so I want to get right into the conversation and hear what you all are thinking about some of these mergers and acquisitions that we're seeing. There's so much that could be talked about. And so, Scott, I want to actually start with you first, and then jump over to Josh next, and just talk about what you think is going on here this past year or so, and how you might characterize that. And while you're talking, I'd like to go ahead and invite the audience to do our first polling question. And so, Scott, we're going to have a polling question here flash up on the screen here in a minute, but you just keep going and tell us some of what you're thinking, and we'll have people answering that poll while you're sharing your view.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, I think looking at sort of the M&A space, we look at the maturation of the streaming sort of market segment over the past few years. And with COVID, quarantine, obviously all the streamers blew up and experienced tremendous growth, right? Those entertainment budgets now, where people weren't going to the theaters, they weren't going out for dinner, a lot of that went in directly to streaming. And then there's obviously this sort of the squeeze on the pay TV side of the business. So those were all really strong tailwinds for the streaming business. The other piece that I think is critical here to look at is AVOD and FAST, right? So free ad supported is a tried and true model that's been around forever. And then what we've seen, so we launched TiVo Plus almost 6 years ago now, and we launched with Pluto, Zumo, Tubi, and all of those have been since acquired over the past few years, right? They've been acquired by major media companies or SVOD solutions. So Tubi, part of Fox, Pluto, part of Viacom, CBS, Paramount now, Zumo, part of Comcast, NBC. So that's interesting because you've got major media companies now with the ability to monetize at kind of both ends of the spectrum on the subscription side, But if a subscriber says, no, wait, I don't want to, I'm going to drop my subscription here, they're able to catch up and say, oh, don't go away angry. We've got you on the free side. And now we can monetize on the ads as well, a tried and true piece. So I think some of the consolidation is recognizing those consumer trends that actually fit the needs of the business very well. The ability to monetize at both the SVOD and ad supported side. Lastly, there's just been, with the explosion over the past few years, I think we're hitting sort of an inflection point, and we're starting to see more consolidation. So a lot of little brands, particularly in the FAST and AVOD space, are now starting to sort of feel the real squeeze. They were all in growth mode. There was an explosion of channels that in the US, I think is going to start to shrink a bit as this becomes more about quality and as consumers seek simplicity in the face of overwhelming choices. So those are the headlines where I see the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Lot of really good points there. And one follow-up question for you real quick. I think we're going to go ahead and show the poll results. We have about 71% of people who answered. And so we'll see if those poll results show up. Maybe not, but one follow-up question there is, do you think that the consolidation is going to really ramp up here before the end of this year? I mean, we're seeing
I
a
think
lot
it will
happen.
continue. I do. Yeah. I think, again, I think we're just sort of maybe crossing that inflection point where that we will continue to see consolidation, both in the M&A space and partnerships. And it's almost a reflection. I know we'll touch on this a little bit later, but like the bundling that we're going to talk about, that's also a reflection of consolidation across the markets. So I would say yes.
Okay. Josh, let's come over to you and see if we can get some perspective on where you think all of this M&A stuff is going on, and then also, balancing between platforms and licensing content.
Sure. Well, there's no doubt that we all just watched, what's going on with the NFL and ESPN. That was the winner, I think, of the survey, even here, and we're seeing that because those leagues that are out there, we saw this movement. We saw the direct to consumer change, the OTT move. And now we're seeing the next phase of that move where the leagues have really gotten savvy. The people who are owning the content have gotten savvy to what you might think of and historically has been the cable operators, the middlemen. And that is now a huge shift that we're seeing. And that shift, with it brings opportunity. And that opportunity is for companies like Disney to do a deal for 10% of ESPN, and then for ESPN to take over those broadcast operations where needed. And what a great fit, right? I mean, I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense for organizations like ESPN to benefit from that relationship, with the NFL. And I honestly think we see it play out with others soon. So if we're thinking about what we might see, we might say we're going to see, some activity there. We know that mantra of live continues to be very relevant, live broadcasting. And then if we speak to another M&A action that's happened, is local. And it can't be better described with that, merger between Nexstar and Tegna that we just saw in the last couple of days. And there's no doubt that there's still a place for local. There's still a place. Now, even though there's compression there and there's cord cutting, and you can read about it when you read about the merger, I still think there's huge opportunity because they create local content. That local content is still very relevant for audiences across the US. And so it gives people the ability to have a place to go and land and feel like they have a home to learn about what's happening, see what's going on. So I think those are two really important areas. Now, if you look out farther, I think you start to think, hey, do the Pinterest, do the Snaps, Do the Reddits of the world now end up becoming platforms for true video delivery? Do they start to get acquired and start to become players in the space? And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. We know where the content's getting created. We have great partners even on this call who are great at delivering content. I think we see some of these, the Snaps, and the Pinterest of the world starting to come into play in the next year.
Yeah, really interesting comments. And certainly some of these other major social platforms are having just an incredible impact, especially with some of the younger demographics, certainly. So, Liz, let's go to you here and see if you can share a little bit of your perspective on the consolidation going on, and also how this is all changing the discovery experience, and any perspective on the advertisers that you'd like to share.
Sure, absolutely. From a consolidation standpoint, it, in my mind, makes absolute sense, simply because there's been such a huge proliferation of content, especially over the past 5 years. But in order for that to completely work, you need to be able to have a bunch of users with a lot more time. And the only thing that we cannot actually manufacture more of is time. So what has been stressed and I think pushed to the limit is actually the consumer tolerance for the amount of content that is out there and how disaggregated it is and hard to find. So I do think it totally makes sense. I mean, everybody's giving a big thumbs up. I know the only way sometimes before the weekend I can find stuff is if I contact our programming department here and say what's on where. Like that seems like a unique insider advantage that the typical layman doesn't have. So that the hope would be the consolidation is to the benefit of the consumer, right? Because it actually is overwhelming at this point. From an advertising standpoint, again, I think that the changes that can happen can be positive if used, if they're done correctly, right? Having major platforms have more first-party data on users, in theory, should make the advertising experience better, right? The ads delivered should be more targeted because end users have the choice between premium and ad tiers. Then they also can select into the experience, right? By knowing that they are going into an experience with ads as opposed to not feeling like they have a choice. I mean, that's a huge advantage over linear, right? Where people are both paying and being subjected to ads. So in theory, though, those ads should become more and more relevant and more specific to the users. I do think that can become a much better user experience over time. I think that on the flip side, with the consolidation, with fewer owners of content going through pipes, then there is also a risk that you have more claiming of revenue, if you will, by the services, right? So as you see sort of hardening of content in different new consolidated places, those players will have an advantage in terms of things like, hey, if we need to up our ad ARPU, let's put more, especially if they own the content, let's put more ad minutes into it, right? There is a potential risk there. I think it is on measure positive, but we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, the technology with advertising is really extensive right now, and especially with AI being incorporated into the background all over the place in terms of having all of this available data to create really targeted advertising that should, potentially even align with the content, and just being able to know what to serve up next based on who your user is, as well as the content that they're watching. So that's a whole nother area that is very, very interesting to look at. And I'm sure the advertising agencies and brand companies are probably out of their mind trying to figure out, how do I reach the customers? Where are the eyeballs? Where do I place my spending, right? And the metrics that go along with that. So really great comments there. I want to switch over and talk a little bit about the television and this very critical role. And so JP, I'm going to come to you here and see if you can share a little bit more about what the role of the TV is now, versus what it was in the past with just the traditional box, and what we should be looking for in the future.
Yeah, sure. So the TV has evolved and has become smart. So it means it has an OS inside. And I think based on what we just heard here, there's a lot of complexity in accessing content. And the role of the OS is really to simplify access to the content coming across multiple apps. If you look at the original smart TVs, they were very much like cell phones. You had the UI and you would launch different apps, and then inside the app you would discover content. In the last few years, we've seen an evolution from a app-centric user interface to a content-centric user interface. So TV is playing a bigger role in surfacing the content that's useful or engaging to the user in the home screen. So the user does not have to open each individual app and can access its favorite content from the home screen. So to make that possible, actually took quite a lot of work and a lot of evolution in the operating system. So it's no longer just a platform where you can just put some apps on top. Now the apps have to talk to the platform. We have to integrate deep into the platform. And the platform has to evolve over time to support all the new features that the app requires. So it becomes basically an integrated experience. So one of the things first that we have in the TV space is not like on the PCs or the cell phone space. You have tons of different brands, tons of different platforms. So you need the OS to provide a hardware abstraction layer. So the apps can ignore basically the differences between different manufacturers, the different brands, the different boards, the different SOCs. They run on top of the OS, so they don't run on top of the hardware. So that enables the apps to scale across a very fragmented ecosystem. The smart TV ecosystem is extremely fragmented. You have an incredible number of brands, and they're different in every geo, in every country, in every geo. And you also have more than one or two OSs. You have quite a few actually, and some brands have their own OS. So it's important for the apps to work with each operating system to make sure they can integrate with each one of them going forward. And because that's a significant investment, we need to choose OSs that will be maintained long term. So we've seen some platforms that have not been actively maintained, and as the apps evolve, the platforms become obsolete, and the TV dies basically. So the TV dies out of software obsolescence long before it dies of hardware obsolescence. The TV still works, but the apps no longer works on those TVs.
Yeah, really great points you just made there about that value coming through the OS and so much more that's getting built for the future of the experience. I think we've got, I want to let Scott go ahead and comment first, and then Josh will come to you, and JP, we might circle back to you. So Scott, go ahead, and then Josh.
Really brief comment there. I agree with everything JP said, but I often think about the coffee table in the living room as the battleground, and you think about the remotes and which remote is the consumer reaching for. In the old days, it would have been the cable remote first and foremost, and then the streamers came along. So I'm reaching for my Apple TV remote. I'm reaching for my Roku remote, and increasingly, I think that smart TV remote, as those TVs get smarter, those services are more holistically integrated and better. I think that's the win for the consumer because it's simpler. It comes down to simplicity, and the consumer is really resisting all these services, all this complexity. Cable used to be simple, that blew up, and now I think smart TVs make it simple again. So I kind of see the battle trending that direction.
Yeah, great comments. JP, did you have a comment on that particular thing, or I could go to Josh and come back to you?
I totally agree on that. Having one remote is a huge win for the consumer, especially non-tech savvy people who don't know which remote to pick up. And also the TV is the best device to actually play video on it because it's a device optimized for video. It's not like your cell phone or your PC. It has a separate video plane that does a lot of image processing, a lot of picture quality, audio quality. So if you plug an external device into it, you just don't get the same quality. The TV gives you the best quality.
Okay, great. Josh, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so first of all, I'd say, kudos to Comcast with X1. You know this, JP, they were ahead of their time when they thought about coming out and delivering X1 and being able to have that kind of next generation experience. But the fact is there is an OS war. There's an OS war happening. People, need to kind of take note because we saw what was happening in the automotive space. We're going to continue to see this kind of convergence, right? We've used this word many times over the years, Elizabeth, right? But there's this convergence that's going to happen in this OS war on the TV set. And I think it's still very relevant to comment that recent YouTube fact about the fact that more people are watching YouTube now in their living room than they are in anywhere else on a big TV. That's a really important statement about the fact that it could be running on a, as an example here for JP, an X1 app, OS platform. That's important. That is critical for this audience to take away.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we are actually seeing an evolution from the setups to the stream boxes and the TV. So it's IP first now. And yeah, that's my point. Sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. Okay, so great conversation here, and I love talking about the power of the television, especially because we're hearing from the hardware manufacturers that like we're not just. It used to be we would break even on the television. Now we're losing money, and we're going to get the money through this software, the OS, and everything that's connected there. So it's really a completely different position. So great conversation. I've got some questions that have come in though that I want to make sure we get answered before we go to our next topic. And so I've got a question here that is specific for Liz. So let me see. The daily and weekend pricing on Sling is quite unique. Was it difficult to get approval from the networks, and what's the strategy behind it? If you could share anything about that.
Yeah, so we recently launched short-term subscriptions on Sling for some of our packages. It's really, it's targeted towards more of a tune-in audience, certainly a sports streaming audience. We just launched those last week. The insight there is, again, it's about what has been really I would say the flaws really with content discovery as it has become disaggregated. People often, especially on the distributor side, and we know this very well, they often will, they'll look for content, they don't know where it is, and then even when they sign up for services, they think that they are getting content that they're not getting, right? It's an extremely complex landscape to overlay and to actually also be able to effectively communicate to a consumer. So, what we have found is there are people who will sign up for a month and for one event, right? There are people who are they'll pay a huge amount for one event, but those people are becoming fewer and fewer, and there is actually a risk of people actually going towards piracy. So the insight was really that if you could make it super easy for someone and very low commitment to buy a short-term subscription that fits exactly the event duration that they want, right? Or the need that they want. Think of a week pass. That could be I'm on vacation somewhere in a rental with a TV where I don't have a subscription. Or a weekend could be there's a tournament going on and I want to watch the entire tournament. There are so many different consumer use cases, and that's really what motivated us. In terms of our programming contracts and everything that we've launched, excuse me, I'm getting a little hoarse. Everything we've launched has been within our rights from a programming contract standpoint. I'm not on the programming team though, so I can't really go beyond that. But certainly allowable in terms of what we can do from a rights standpoint. I would also say that Sling has a very unique offering in market. It's not a full cable replacement. It's a cable alternative. So it's not a place where you could go and get a replication of what you can find via sort of MVPD, vMVPD landscape, or even from other vMVPDs like Fubo or YouTube TV. There are pieces, very key pieces of content that we don't carry. So for us, it made sense because if you already know that consumers are looking for specific things, if you can honor, what they want and how they want to watch that content, then you're going to be better off.
Okay, great. Thank you for answering that. Here's the next question from the audience. Is the FAST model sustainable in the long term? It feels like programming has gotten better, but there's still so many choices. So I don't know if anybody has comments there.
I'll jump in. Absolutely, it's classic television. It's free. It's ad supported. We all remember ABC, CBS, NBC, Univision, and I think it has a very critical and long term role to play along with the SVOD services. Again, I think there will be consolidation in this space. I don't think if there's thousands of channels available in the U.S. today, that won't last. Again, the consumer is moving towards and looking for more simplicity. I also think the consumer is looking for quality, and quality over quantity wins every time. So, will the model last? Absolutely. I also think there'll be consolidation there. And one last comment on it: the U.S. has reached, I think, a point of absolute maturity with regards to FAST and AVOD. Europe is probably a year to 2 years behind. So Europe, we see what's happened in the fast AVOD space over the past couple of years in the US, and this is reflected globally. It started out with independent brands, so that the Tastemades, the Jukins, great brands, Cheddar in the news category. But this is now up-leveled, and the person who asked the question commented, quality is getting better because you've got studios, networks, broadcasters, all coming into the space now. It's not just, B-roll back catalog content. It's tier one content entering the fast space. I think that trend will also continue along with consolidation. And I think Europe is a little bit behind the US, again, probably 12 to 24 months, but we're seeing a lot of those studios, networks, and broadcasters now starting to roll out their fast solutions.
Okay, great comments there. Anybody else want to say anything about the viability of fast over time?
Yeah, I would add to it. I would agree absolutely with Scott. I think it also, if you look globally, there are lots of markets that have always been free to air. So for them, it's a kind of natural evolution of that behavior. And then in terms of the US, I think what you'll see is more of a blending between fast and paid. We've launched our free stream service as a sidecar to a paid service, and it's tremendously successful because it's really a through line, right? If someone can sample our service for free, decide to convert to paid, and then on the backside, the content that they originally watched is still there, right? So they can continue. It absolutely makes sense in that context from a business standpoint, but I think also from a user standpoint too. A lot of the time, the people who are paying for content on our platform, and I'm certain on other platforms as well, may also be watching free content while they are paying for a subscription, and they don't necessarily differentiate between this is free and this is paid, right? The quality level is that good. So they're actually, as a customer, when they decide to disconnect, they're thrilled that they can continue to watch some of the great content that they thought was part of their paid subscription. They can continue to watch. So I think that you'll see more mixing of models as the players consolidate. I believe you'll see more and more of that.
Yeah, it's really interesting, I think, for consumers to navigate what's going on. And I'll just share that our family is in the middle of about to cut the cord. So we're paying a fortune for pay TV and all sorts of other things. And so we've made that decision. And so we're beginning the navigation of like, what does that mean? What kind of services we want? And so there's a lot to navigate, and we know a lot as it is, just given the work, some of the work that we do here covering it. So there's another question here about branding, and I think this goes in with the other topics we've discussed. We saw HBO doing a reversal on their brand changes. We've also just noted the MSNBC and this breaking away, or however we want to put that, with Versant, and then renaming some things. Does anybody have any perspective they want to share on like brand loyalty and brand presence and the importance and how that works when you want to change something that, like, HBO is, people know what HBO is if you've been around. And so, what does this mean for these brand marketers who have to make probably some really tough decisions that are risky, and you don't necessarily know what's going to happen, even such that you may have to reverse, right? So anybody want to comment there about brands? No,
I'll
nobody
jump in
wants to
real
say
quick. I mean,
it.
yeah,
Yep, go ahead.
that was a debacle. Was pretty messy. I don't think there's much loyalty at the service level. I think what drives viewership is this is a hits driven business, always has been, always will be. So this is why we see so much churn, people dropping subscriptions and then popping back on. It's like I want my shows when they're on, or when somebody recommends something. When the next Game of Thrones comes, I'm going to fire up that HBO subscription once again. Yes, there's brand value there, absolutely. But is there loyalty? I think increasingly less so.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
Yeah,
I
okay,
think
so we'll leave it at
also
that one.
MS Now doesn't have the same ring, right, Elizabeth, as MSNBC has had.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, change is hard, so we'll see how that all works out. I want to get back to some of the questions that I have planned, and also just a reminder, we do have a little lightning round at the end where we're going to do a quick lightning round where we get some quick feedback from our speakers here. But the next question, really, Liz, I'm going to come back to you and see if you can share what the impact is for platforms acting like a gateway to other services. So if we think about Prime Video, Roku, Apple TV Plus, and how this really enables a lot more, depending on what you're who we're talking about, for other services that become that connection.
Yeah, I mean, I think it again goes back to the role of them. They've had a hybrid role, right? Because they are both a platform, but they're also licensing content. So if done, pros and cons. If done right from a curation standpoint, it can be the best user experience there is, because it's much easier in that kind of a role. As an Amazon Prime versus an Amazon Fire, it's much easier to play the role as curator, right? Because you are a service, you have people's first party data, you probably more history on their viewership. So the ability, I think, to make a better user experience is pretty high. However, having said that, I think that it can be limiting from a discovery standpoint, meaning you're back to sort of a concept of a walled garden, right? It's not, when you go to an OS like a smart TV OS, they've got everything. Discovery is an issue, it's getting better, but there's not necessarily preferential gating versus platforms where you have their own content plus apps. There is that potential. There's that risk of, okay, well, yes, it's curated, it's a better experience, but what am I not seeing? Or what am I, as a user, what's not being surfaced to me? And I think that risk exists there. However, the reality is most people just don't have time. So if they like the way that the service operates and they like the vast majority of the content that's there, then they're going to continue to gravitate towards that platform. So I think that you will see more and more of that. I think that there's probably a limit to which platforms want to dabble with media rights or invest in media rights, because it's an extremely costly endeavor that can be highly unprofitable. So I do think that you'll see a lot of, interplay and movement of content between those platforms that are also buying and licensing content. So I think the user experience will not necessarily be the same or consistent from a content standpoint over time. And that's where then those platforms need to make sure that their user experience from a discovery standpoint or from a tech standpoint is super solid, right? Because you can bridge some of that gap by still having a really clean UI, easy to use, et cetera, even if some of the content may have disappeared and gone somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it does bring up that, again, the position too of the smart TV. And so JP, maybe you can expand a little bit on the user interface and the smart TV really be able to transform that piece for the experience.
Yeah, so one of the things that defines the smart TV versus a mobile device or PC is that it's actually hard to use. Remote control has buttons, and it's not the best way to interact with content. So we've seen the emergence of voice, especially far-field voice. You can just talk to your device. Think of your TV as becoming as a really big smart speaker with a really big screen, always listening. The TV can be listening, or the remote can be listening, which brings different types of advantages. But there's also potentially cameras in your TV, so you could use gestures to control it. So we're seeing a big effort to try to make the TV much easier to use without having to reach out for the remote all the time. And another aspect is that since content is coming now from multiple different apps all at the same time, the user doesn't have to know which apps is in the content. The OS in a TV needs to be really optimized to do what we call very, very fast app switching. So being able to pause and resume apps extremely fast, so the user doesn't know that he has changed an app to watch a certain content. It's not acceptable to shut down an app and wait minutes to launch a different app on your TV. So we have these two big aspects that are being worked on actively to make the device much easier to use.
Yeah, and there's so much more too that we're going to see beyond that, especially if we think about things like health and wellness and leveraging the TV to connect with consumers in new ways and communications, especially if you think about there being a camera in there and those voice controls and accessibility. So great comments there. I've got another great question I'm going to ask from the audience. Are we going to see more of the linear channels and OTT models that Netflix started with TF1 in France? So does anybody have any comments about, linear plus streaming?
Yeah, we watched that one very closely because so I did the deal with TF1 in France for distribution across our platforms, including automotive, which was great. Really loved the team there. And what we recognized in building out our TV and TiVo OS business is that obviously the tier one global partners are absolutely critical. The Disneys of the world, right? The Peacocks, the Paramounts, but it's those local heroes. Well, the term we use, basically the leading regional streamers in country, are absolutely critical. So if you're a fringe national, TF1 is at the top of your list, far higher than Paramount, most likely. And I love the Paramount catalog, but again, in country is critical. So we see the big tier one brands like a Netflix recognizing the importance of those, and as the business grows and matures, I think it becomes critical that they embrace those the leading streamers in territory. So I see more of that on the horizon, and it's an interesting development we're watching very closely.
Great. Josh, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I'm good. I think it was covered.
Okay. Just double checking. Okay, so great question there. Let me see. I've got another one here. This is an audience question. YouTube is an example of aggregation at a huge scale, but lots of mini content creators, they are killing it in streaming on the TV. What lessons do you take in aggregation from YouTube's approach?
Okay, I'll take this one.
Okay, Josh.
So when you go to talk to the folks that were traditionally creating UGC content and are now thinking about creating studios or creating entire, branded machines, the one thing that I've heard loud and clear from folks is the ability to quickly pivot and create content in the order of weeks, days, where they can create brand new TV shows, try them out, throw them on the wall, see if they stick, and then immediately look at the data and immediately pivot. And I think that's one of the most interesting things that we're seeing from that market is those creators, the Mr. Beasts of the world are now becoming branding and content machines, and they're doing that with actual data, and they're picking a platform like YouTube and they're growing that business on one platform and then they're growing it to others. And we're now starting to see the third, fourth iterations of that happening.
Yeah, really interesting.
And I would add at
Uh-huh.
scale and with great production quality too. So it's sort of like the competitive advantage that you would have thought of from a traditional media company is, we all know what YouTube videos looked like 10 years ago. They're extremely, they were not advanced or not professional looking. It's totally different ballgame, right? My 15-year-old reminds me every single day what part of a dying universe but quite seriously, like, there's the competitive advantage of the traditional media company is decreasing compared to creators. The audience is moving towards creators, and frankly the quality of what they're doing, backed by data, exactly as Josh said, is really increasing exponentially.
Well, and that maybe does bring up the big term, AI, and how that's impacting content creation as well, and the enormous leaps and jumps in technology evolution to make some of this stuff happen. I mean, it's really crazy. So, any comments just on that impact of AI, excuse me, especially for content creation, and is that going to somehow take over uh, some of this studios and how things are getting done in the background with having original content?
I think it's absolutely, inevitable. There's obviously resistance and very valid concerns over likenesses, IP, intellectual property, and how these AI models are created and generated. But the output is undeniably compelling. And I don't mean quality of the sort of the style. I mean what it can do for creators, showrunners, special effects artists, right? Those tools are going to impact multiple facets of our industry. So it's unstoppable, and I think we're just at the game is being played starting now. We're just at the first inning, but I think we're going to see it across the board, across everything from storyboarding upstream to execution and distribution and recommendations downstream.
Yeah, absolutely. The power of AI, it's crazy. So we're tracking a lot of that too, how companies are utilizing AI in the background, as well as the consumer perceptions of AI. Before we go into our lightning round, we have just a couple minutes before that. I wanted to, Scott, go back to you and see if you can just comment on the role of the car and the vehicle.
Oh yeah.
We've always viewed, the home, the office, and the vehicle. These are these three places where people are all the time. And can you share a little bit about what Xperi and TiVo are doing with BMW and extending into the car environment?
Yeah. Thanks, Liz. No, the car in a nutshell, it's the second living room, and here's how we see it. We've been in the Xperi and TiVo's been in the automotive business for 25 years on the audio side of the business. So from HD radio to podcasts to metadata to song recommendations, we've got technology kind of across the industry. What we started seeing a couple of years ago, and it really was led by BMW, always an innovator in the automotive space, is the emergence of video. So anybody sat in a new car, you see that big screen in the center of the dashboard. Well, that screen is typically running a browser, and it's typically Linux or Android, so it's very accessible in terms of video delivery. New cars are typically running on 5G networks. So essentially, these are tablets on wheels. So that's the start. And we really see this, the story being written in 3 chapters. That's chapter 1 today. And we rolled out with BMW a year and a half ago. We're in millions of cars now. And but chapter 2 gets really interesting. That's multi-screen. So it's we've seen some aftermarket stuff, rear seat for kids in the back seat, but here it comes in the front seat for the passenger, the co-driver. So BMW rolls this out next year. Mercedes has a car out now. You're starting to see some of these from the Asian manufacturers as well. When you have a dedicated screen for that passenger, whether it's front seat or rear, that changes the video viewing equation. So I think that's going to start to get really interesting. And then the third chapter is autonomous. I live in San Francisco. I take Waymo all the time. It's awesome. The first ride is mind blowing. You're sort of sitting there going, this is crazy. The second ride is like, oh yeah, this is going to happen regardless. And I would love nothing more than to have an autonomous commute from San Francisco to San Jose. So I think that's inevitable. And I think when that happens, again, it starts to really redefine that in-car experience as a second living room. And it's not just the screens, it's surround sound. And from an entertainment perspective, I was showing Paramount executives Top Gun Maverick in a new 7 series, and they're sitting there when the speakers hit, that music plays. It's phenomenal. It's visceral. So so we're excited about that. It's early. These are early days, but that second living room is taking shape now.
Yeah, really interesting. Thanks for sharing some of that. And it was really cool to see that demo at the Stream TV show where you had the BMW there. So, okay, guys, we are going to go into our lightning round. I am going to ask you some questions, and I would like everybody to go around and give an answer. And so I'll call out your name for an answer. JP will have skipping a few questions here. And so the first question I want to ask about, and you are allowed to have a 3-word answer or less, and that's all. And so what do you think about the future of bundling? And so we are clear on the order. We're going to go with Liz and then Scott and then Josh, and then we'll have JP on some of the questions that he's going to answer. So I'll call your name out, and please give your answer, and we'll go to the next question. So Liz, future of bundling.
More coming ahead.
Okay. Scott?
Mine was that old disco song, more. Consistent with Liz.
Josh?
Live sports.
Okay. Next question. Next big merger. Liz?
Roku and Blink.
Scott?
Apple buys Lionsgate.
Hey, Josh?
Pinterest. ByteDance buys Pinterest.
Okay.
Interesting.
Best aggregator today. Liz?
YouTube.
Scott?
I interpret this as bundling, and I really like Instacart plus Peacock as kind of an outlier, but a cool bundle. It's maybe not an aggregator. Forgive me.
Josh?
Oh man, let's go with X1. I actually think X1 is great.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Fast channel growth? Is this going to happen and continue growing?
Slow growth, consolidation.
Scott?
Channel count down, viewership up.
Josh?
Yes.
Okay, great. Next one, must-have feature. Liz?
Shorter term subscriptions.
Scott?
Micro dramas for the West.
Josh?
AI audio control.
Okay, and JP?
Voice search via far-field voice.
Okay, voice search, great. Okay, next one here, most underrated platform.
Apple TV Plus.
TiVo OS for the win.
TikTok.
Okay, JP?
I would say smart speakers, because they can be used to control your TV as well.
Okay, that's a good one. Smart speakers. Okay, cable comeback odds. Liz?
Decreases every day.
Okay. Scott?
It's not cable, it's broadband.
Josh?
I want to say none. I mean, it's IP connectivity.
Okay. Okay, global expansion trends. What's the biggest global expansion trend? Liz?
I'm going to apologize for this answer because it's really bad. Yes, but uneven.
Okay. Scott?
I say slow, local content is king.
Okay. Josh?
I love slow local content. I'd say syndication. It continues.
Okay, great. Gen Z preferences. Liz?
Mobile, free, authentic.
Okay. Scott?
Vertical video.
Okay. Josh?
In person.
Okay. And our last one, what is next? Liz?
Turbulence and opportunity.
Okay. Scott?
Car as second living room.
Josh?
Content, content, content.
Okay. And JP?
I would say edge AI, which means AI running on the device, so you can analyze the content that the TV presents and understand it.
Okay, more AI. Excellent. Thank you all so much for playing. I love to just get those quick questions in, and that is going to have to be our last word today. So I want to thank you all for being here. I would like to thank the sponsors, our early sponsors of Future of Video. A reminder, we're going to be releasing our State of Streaming report. And if you're interested in getting involved at Future of Video, please reach out to our my colleague, Ashton Gambrell. We have some great registration rates, and I want to send a big thank you now to our speakers. So thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you all in Marina Del Rey, I hope, here in a few months. And so thank you again for being here.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And I want to remind you all that we are tracking the North American streaming services. We have about 400 services that we're tracking and doing subscriber estimates for about 150 of them. We are also constantly tracking the markets and understanding what is next for that consumer experience. And so please be sure to always be looking at our research work. And again, I want to thank you for joining us today. This will conclude our session. And if you have any questions or would like to be working with Parks Associates, we'd love to work with you. So feel free to reach out to me directly or any of our team. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you again for joining us.